Hey everyone, welcome to the Jasmine Ortiz Show. We are here for episode 8. The theme this week is creative motivation and discipline. I'm back once again with my lovely co-host, Jordy Polycarp, this time live from Nashville, Tennessee. We're here talking about some current updates with music, technology, fashion, and other things that we want to talk to you about. So first up, let's talk about some fashion updates. Recently, the Met Gala happened in New York City, and there were a slew of controversies on multiple levels, some of which I won't get into because then we would have to speak for 3 hours on it specifically. But fashion-wise, we saw some really interesting choices this year. I think most notably in outrage online, people are talking about the Camila Cabello ice purse. Uh, personally, anyway, I don't know why this was a choice. I don't even see the vision behind it. It didn't make sense with her dress. I mean, there was a rose in there that was coated in 24 karat gold, but
Yeah,
it felt like it missed the mark overall.
I saw a lot of people comparing it to Hunger Games and like District 1 and how like all of the like with everything going on in the world right now, like seeing the absolute like abuse of money in a lot of ways. Like I've
Yeah.
always loved the Met Gala. I've always thought it's really gorgeous and like I like seeing everyone's looks and I like seeing the creativity. But I think there were several things about it this year that just missed the mark.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I totally see what you're saying about the Hunger Games capital-esque vibe because it a lot of the outfits, I won't say all of them, a lot of the looks kind of felt like costumey, but
mhm.
not in a purposeful campy way. And just the amount of exorbitant money that was spent on creating these looks, purchasing tickets, just the entire event overall is it's a lot. It's just very much not relatable to the general public at all.
Mhm.
And especially because this is a televised event that is seen as one of the pinnacles of fashion each year. Who is this event for? Right? And you talk about how the event overall is a fundraiser for arts and design scholarships that get sponsored by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They sponsor the designers and the creations that end up on display in the museum. And I think there's so much to be said about the importance of preserving art in these institutions, but at the same time, like giving back to your community.
Yeah. I wish they did a little bit more of that in a way of like with us. I would assume that we're supposed to be the audience. Like it's kind of a like playground for the celebrities and artists and things that we look up to, but at the same time, I feel like the whole point of it is its exclusivity, but even to the point where we are allowed to see like their entrances and their outfits and things like that. And at the same time it felt like there were certain things about it that were like alienating for its normal audience that might have been a little damaging. And to the point where there were a
Yeah.
lot of people that didn't go, like people that usually do that this year did not. I feel like also speaks a lot to that as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it also kind of makes you wonder, are the younger generations just becoming less and less tolerant of these kind of displays? And that's something just that is yet to be seen because
Mm.
a lot of the kids who are younger in Gen Z or middle to older range of Gen Alpha, we haven't necessarily heard from them. And I think we grew up, at least people like 20 and plus, idolizing these kind of events and truly enjoying watching televised things like the Oscars, the Grammys, etc. So it's interesting how the culture has started to shift. But I kind of, the one thing I want to point out, I kind of feel like it's shifted more in the arts than in sports. I don't
Mm.
see people with the same energy calling out athletes or large sports events for spending the same amounts of money. So that's another kind of hypocritical point of view because I do think that arts do have a validity in society. They have a place in society and they have a right to be preserved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, where do we draw the line with both?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is gender based as well. Like, I think if they're like sporting events, they assume that their audience is different than Met Gala and therefore put a little bit more importance on it, or assume that it takes more, I don't know, grit and things like that in order for it to exist. But I think it's the tale as old as time of like girly things are not important to put money into and stuff like that, quote unquote. But
And that's like the main point that stuck out to me and bothered me about the entire thing in general, because it's I 100% agree and understand like why there was outrage,
mhm,
especially with like how expensive everything was and everything is just for everyday people. But like, where is that energy when it comes to your favorite artist on tour or your favorite football player playing the Super Bowl?
mhm,
That's my take on it. Some other things happening in fashion that have been trending on TikTok for quite some time include the office siren trend.
mhm.
And I work from home most of the time. I don't have an office to go to, but I am obsessed with this aesthetic. Like, I want to know where they find these clothes, because I feel like I can never find office or professional wear that feels sexy and fun and youthful. So I need some tips on that.
I think what it is, well, I think definitely a lot more brands are catching on to it and are now creating like a section for it. Like I saw Finesse. Do you know that like AI powered like
Yes, yes,
clothing
I've seen
brand?
them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I bought from them before, and like they now have a whole separate like office siren section and things like that. But for me, it's interesting to see because I feel like that aesthetic is something that like the frumpy version is what I was wearing when I was like 10, like like having the same like rectangle glasses, but mine were like transition glasses. Like I feel like all the girlies with glasses in like 2006 are pissed
Like scratching their
seeing
heads,
this.
like,
Yeah. It's cute though. I feel like I'm not seeing enough of like the office siren clothing you can actually wear to the office. I've been seeing a lot of people, a lot of the corporate girlies are like, if I wore this, I would get sent to HR.
It's
But
like a book talk version of corporate life.
yeah,
Like
it's giving
where
Gossip
you're
Girl, which is fine. But
Yes. I mean, Gossip Girl is like my style inspo, so like
mm,
I need to get on that.
yeah,
Um yeah, I do think some of the outfits are probably not actually work appropriate, but I wish
it's
they
cute.
were.
I would
Yeah.
like to keep it, especially for New York. I feel like the
Very New York
clothing
vibe.
trends here are very much like what you wear to the office is what you wear to drinks with your friends afterwards, or to go to the club after drinks with your friends after that.
So it has
Um,
to be very flexible and able to transition like day to
yes,
night.
yeah.
I love
So it
that. Oh
works.
my
I kind
god.
of like it.
It's making me envision the life I'm manifesting for myself in my late 20s in New York with this vibe. Like, this is happening. Speaking of another New York City vibe, Sex in the City is probably one of my favorite like nostalgia watches. I know that it's your comfort movie, like the
Oh,
the Sex in the City
always.
movie, and I have started rewatching it with my roommate Julia also, and there's so many there's so much variety in like the good and the bad and the ugly in this show.
Hmm.
So you see a lot of like the toxic stereotypes that were very pervasive in the early 2000s rearing their head. You see a lot of toxic like inner friendship dynamics, but you also see a lot of growth and fun and like relatable moments. So as a Sex in the City expert, like, what is your take on this?
Okay, I have a lot. I've been seeing, I feel like everyone is rewatching it right now, which is crazy. Yeah, the movie is definitely my comfort movie, and I'm on my like 10th rewatch of the show at this point.
That's me
What's
with Gossip Girl.
what's been interesting to see, and especially like watching this as an adult, and kind of seeing like the progression of these characters is like seeing people talk about Carrie both as like a fashion icon and a terrible friend. And I have to agree with both. Like
Yeah.
as the series goes on, I always really like TV shows where the main character isn't necessarily likable. Like I think that she is in a lot of ways, and she's supposed to be this very like youthful. She's probably supposed to be like the most like youthful, fun like voice of this friend group. So it's an interesting dynamic, but at the same time, she has a level of immaturity that borders on like just being not a good person. She makes everything
Yeah.
about her, unfortunately. And while she is the main character, I feel like it's not the best example of what like friendships should look like, or like what like our friendships look like in our 20s.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting to see. I still love it. I think it's an iconic show, and I think some of the other characters have really like always redeeming qualities. But
I love
seeing Carrie as
Charlotte.
a main character, it's been a really interesting rewatch. What have you thought
Yeah,
so far?
I totally agree about Carrie. So I think Carrie is one of those people, like characters, that you can kind of imagine in some of the friendships maybe you've had in your life in the past, where this person is very like bubbly and enigmatic at the beginning, and they draw you in because of that. But then you realize that anything that you or your other friends have going on is always kind of in the back burner. And that's similar to one of the questions that we answered a few weeks ago about what do you do if a friend is draining or abusive of your time, your finances, your emotions. It kind of feels like that. And I know Carrie like goes running to her friend group at the slightest inconvenience, like, cosmopolitan in hand. And then, Miranda has a real issue, or Charlotte has a real issue. And it's just like, okay, bye guys, I have to go see Big.
Right.
And I feel like we've all had that friend. The friend who's like, oh my god, my boyfriend's horrible to me, and then runs to him the next day.
Mm.
It just happens,
I
but
might have been that friend at one point or a time. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I
and
am anymore, but
I also think like it is a sign of growth when you can look back and be like, okay, I have been toxic like that in the past. I think all of us have been. But
because we're
to
young.
then, but then to idolize a character that solely, hones in on those toxic traits can be a weird dynamic, because then you're watching her and you're like, wow, I wish I had this fun, exciting New York City, friend group life. But then you realize most of the problems in Carrie's life she brings onto herself.
Oh, she 100% creates every single one of them.
And it's like
Every
some
single
of the things in her relationships also were so easily avoided.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the issues with Big were so easily avoided.
Big should have just never existed.
Yeah, that too. I feel
also...
like
Yeah, go ahead.
No, keep going.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's also indicative of the time period and like what kind of man women of the time wanted, or like were hardworking, independent, like women in their 20s and 30s in the early 2000s. Like the kind of man that maybe they were attracted to probably was Big, or a version of, in this like bachelor Casanova way. But I don't think that women of our generation want guys like that. Like women of our generation who like men, I don't think want this like hyper masculine, like unemotional type of guy. And so it makes it an even harder watch, because we're like, clearly this man is emotionally unavailable and non-committal and cold in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And like, granted, now I'm thinking I've dated a lot of people like this. Let me not be
me thinking back to college, like
you know what? Never mind.
I think there were definitely moments. There were definitely moments where I learned from a situation with someone like that. 100%. But like, could I see myself in that situation again? Like, absolutely not. And Carrie gets in that situation again and again and again.
I just hope I'm not still dating that kind of person when I'm like 38. Like, and which is what seems to happen in Sex and the City. Like, I feel like it's fine when you're like in college and like 19 and like 22 and stuff like that. But I feel like as our frontal lobes are starting to solidify a little bit, I don't want them anymore, I don't think. And I hope we can learn to make different choices than our main character.
Absolutely. And I quick little blurb back into Gossip Girl because I'm obsessed with the show. I feel like Serena Vanderwoodson is the same type of main character.
Mm.
I did not like Serena for most of the show. I love her as a character because she's fun, she's energetic, whatever, but like her choices and the actions that they induce in the rest of the characters are just insane. Like being with a teacher,
I
the
forgot about
older
that.
the older men, dating her best friend's boyfriend,
Hmm.
his best friend. Like it was doing too much at all the wrong times.
She's giving
And
New York.
I'm a Blair girl, so I'm a Blair girl at heart. I
Fair.
have to be real. Blair was also super toxic, but I liked the way she was toxic more than how Serena was toxic.
I hated them both.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to go into a quick commercial break before our next segment. Hey guys, welcome back into our next segment. This is our topic of the week. So, as I mentioned briefly in the beginning, our topic this week is creative motivation and discipline. This topic was inspired by our guest this episode, Nicolle Garcia. This is a really interesting topic to narrow in on because I know we've kind of discussed this back and forth a little bit in the post college transition with my mental health journey with ADHD. And in my interview with Nicolle, she describes discipline as a word that she hates because it kind of feels like the antithesis of creativity. But then she goes on to say discipline is necessary because there's no way to get around the fact there's 24 hours in a day and you have to make the most of it. So, how do you like grapple with that difference between creative flow and like actual discipline?
Yeah. I think that's a really good. I might have like touched on this maybe a couple episodes ago, but for me, I post college, I had to make myself a schedule. Because I need structure. And for me discipline means structure. To a certain
Same.
extent. I don't think I'm a very disciplined person. I never have been. And I don't find it fun. Like so when I started with
Me.
music, I was doing classical piano, and that required so much discipline, and it took all the joy out of it 100%. So I think
Yeah.
that when it comes to merging discipline with creativity, I think that there are ways that you can build it into your life, but I don't think it's necessary for being a creative. I also don't think it necessarily has to stifle you either. Like I know a lot of
Hmm.
people who benefit from it, and I think it's just what works for them. But for me, I think that being a creative, and especially being an independent artist and having to wear all these hats and like schedule your life and schedule your posts and trying to get in like songwriting sessions and things like that. I think that if you can manage to hold yourself accountable in a way that like if you had a team that worked for you, they would also be on a schedule.
Hmm.
If you can kind of implement that into your life, there are ways to like support your creativity with discipline, I think.
Yeah, I liken this back to something that Craig used to tell us, like those rules in life or in songwriting can help you make decisions faster and easier.
Mhm.
And I do feel this way about discipline, although I am actively trying to get better at it. It is something that has never fully come natural to me because with the arts specifically, I took to it immediately. So I never had this horrible I guess growing pain in getting into music. Of course, as I learned new things, I had to practice more and more, and it is something that you have to put time into. But like you mentioned with classical piano, I loved classical piano, but I hated practicing.
Mm.
I loved sitting there and like, you know, busting out like a piece super fast and like super accurately, but then the work that it took to get there was genuinely grueling. And I find that with a lot of different things, and it's not a lack of wanting to put in the time or the effort or even laziness. It's a matter of, okay, well, this doesn't feel creative anymore, so now I'm associating it with work or something stressful instead of something that I would find joy and happiness in. So I think I've had to rewire my brain entirely to stop associating it with negative connotations. And literally, like, I have a whiteboard of like tasks I need to complete. It's color coded. Purple is socials, black is business, blue is recording, and pink is personal. So I
Period.
just do that because that helps me visually identify, okay, where are these tasks that I'm stressed out about sitting in different pockets of my life? What is something I need to prioritize versus something that can sit on the back burner? And I've tried it different ways, like just general to-do lists don't work for me because then I'm like literally looking at never ending things that I have to get done and I don't know how to compartmentalize it. So, yeah, I feel like separating things out by type of thing helps. And one thing that you said that I really loved, that we talked about a few months ago, was designating different days for
Mm-hmm.
different tasks or types of things.
Yeah, it helps because I think depending on your work schedule, a lot of us artists also have our day jobs, and trying to work in that time in a way that isn't tiring or it's like taking away from what you need to be like a fully functioning person is really important. So for me, like Sundays are my I have to stay home days because I was over exerting myself and I was stretching myself really thin in a lot of ways. And I feel like I tend to do that a lot in general. Like
Yeah, me
of
too.
my list of priorities, self-care is usually pretty low.
The bottom.
And I'm trying to change that because I think I deserve it. But at the same time, like I need it. I have to force myself to have the time to do it. So having like one day a week that I literally cannot do anything else. Like I can be on my laptop and things like that, but like making sure that I have to stay home helps with a lot of that. And then like having certain days that I hang out with friends. I have like two of those a week and they can be interchangeable, or like using one for like dating or stuff like that. Just having them built in so that I make sure that I'm taking care of myself and like also taking care of the people around me that I love and that I want to be able to see, and like building time for life outside of the creative aspect as well. I think it's important.
Yeah. I think it's so important when you're an independent artist, like you said, doing all these different things for yourself, basically making up five different people's jobs in a one person team.
Hmm.
You have to do that. And I learned that specific tactic from you. So I try to make Sundays like my at home cleaning, refreshing kind of reset day. And it doesn't always work how I want it to work, and that's okay. I think you also have to give yourself grace when you are making a schedule and maybe it doesn't work how you need it to the first time. Try again and try again and try again and see what
Hmm.
works and what fits. Because I know it was like a huge series of trial and error for me in many ways. Another aspect of this I want to talk about is creative motivation specifically. So I know when I have like a song or a melody or lyrics in my head. They just kind of like appear there, and then I'm singing around my room or in my car, and then I'm taking out my voice recorder, and it can just go wherever from there.
Hmm.
What about when that doesn't happen? When you have to sit down and you need to write a song? And I feel like this would happen a lot more when we were in school,
Hmm.
but I also feel like that's a skill that you have to keep honing.
For sure. I think for a lot of people, or I'll speak from my perspective, but as a skill, I feel like in the same ways that I've had to like build in ways to like emotionally regulate and stuff like that throughout my day, I think it's also a skill to be able to like, okay, I need to get this thing done. And for me, creating music is always a little bit emotional. So like finding ways to express myself quickly and concisely, I feel like is what's helped me do that. If I'm like, okay, I have this amount of time, like taking like English lit classes and things like that also I feel like help to sort of start with, okay, we're gonna do train of thought writing for 5 minutes. Whatever comes to mind, just keep going until timer goes. And I feel like at least having that is a good way to just get everything out there in a way that doesn't feel like time pressured. Like it gives you enough room within constraints to like be creative, and then you can use it to then build something in a mathematical way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I look at songwriting as a puzzle. So I see all these different pieces that don't really make sense at the beginning, but then they can find a way to fit together. And I don't always write things in order. In fact, I feel like I usually don't. So, I mean, maybe sometimes I will start with the verse, sometimes I'll start with the chorus, sometimes I'll even have an idea that sounds like a chorus, then it ends up being a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I also like to do is make word maps. So if you have like a concept overall, this song is going to be about friendship or something like that, then you can write word associations like just on a piece of paper that remind you of friendship or a specific friendship that you had, a name of a friend, an instance or memory that you have with them, and then see like what you can derive phrases or moments or intentions or feelings from that page, and then I will go from there as far as lyrics
I've
go.
never done that.
I think
That's a really good idea.
the word associations really help.
Hmm.
Also, I've seen people do random word generators and just go with that, and I want to start doing that because I think it's just so chaotic and fun.
That's fun.
Like, how am I going to work tree and elevator into a song? I don't know. I'll figure it out. And one other thing, how do artists employ this discipline while staying passionate? Because I think burnout is such a huge reality in our industry. I know I felt it immensely the summer right after we graduated, because I felt like I was just go, 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 all up into this major stopping point, and then I was like, where do I go from here? So it took some time to kind of build that passion and drive and energy back up.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are feeling it. The post college thing in particular. And I think a lot of us, like early 20s, is such a weird time to be feeling that, like as a normal human in general, and then also as a creative. I think that for artists, in terms of like trying to keep that discipline while still staying passionate about what they do, is a lot of like remembering that at the same time that you are a person, you're also a brand. And like
Mm,
deciding to give yourself that scheduled time because you deserve it. Like I think for a lot of us, like art and music and visual arts started as a hobby because most school programs just don't have, if you go to a traditional school, most of them just don't have enough time for the things that you actually want to do, or it's always an add-on and not in the actual curriculum. So I think now it's hard to take ourselves seriously because nobody else did, if that makes sense. Or at least for
yeah,
me in
yeah,
particular, like making sure that I'm taking that seriously. But I think if you can kind of remember yourself as a business, and then also having people around you who like your work or who want to help you with your work, and they're like, I noticed that like you seem like you need help with this, like I want to help do this and this and this, and then like having meetings and things like that. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at, like building a team of like people who care about what I do, who are also way more strict about it than I am. So they're like,
yeah, yeah.
you said we were gonna meet today at 12. Where are you? And I'm like, okay, you're right. This is important.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All really good pieces of advice, good insights. Let's go to a quick commercial break before our next segment. Hey guys, welcome back to the Jasmine Ortiz Show. Right now, we're moving into my favorite segment, the Uncut Diamonds segment, where we interview up and coming artists, entrepreneurs, and creatives. Today, we have the incredibly talented University of Miami graduate Nicolle Garcia, and we're here to discuss her upcoming projects, both with her own name and with a group as well. So I'm very excited to have you here, Nicolle. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Jasmine, I'm super excited. As I was telling Jasmine earlier, usually I'm the interviewer, and today I get to be the interviewee.
That's such an exciting switch up of the hats that you wear, because I definitely understand that from the opposite perspective. Before I started doing the podcast, I had done a lot of different media interviews, TV, radio, even just responding to questionnaires for articles. So it's so different, and it's a unique position to be in, to kind of sit across the other side of the table.
For sure.
All right, so I want to go right into it. Let's hear from you directly. Can you tell our audience where you're from, what your story is with music?
So I'm a very proud Nicaraguan American artist. I was born there, but I grew up in the States, particularly in Miami. So as you can imagine, there's so much music here, and I didn't even start music until I was about 17. So I was kind of late in the game, per se, when I formally started studying music. And I always joke around with my friends. I say, oh, I got into university because I have such a great personality. But clearly, I mean, we all know, going to Frost, it's a challenge, and it's something that made me grow at a very fast pace compared to my peers, because they had been studying music formally for so many years. And so it was a great place for me, because I just had to quickly rise to the occasion. And I remember at that time, I was like working 2 jobs and going to school full time. And I would quite literally wake up at 4 in the morning.
Oh
4
my
in the
goodness.
morning to
Wow.
make sure I had enough time to practice.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what middle C was on the piano. But, all of that has, I feel like, created this resilience within myself. And it definitely takes hard work and not just talent. So that's something I kind of try to tell myself and surround myself with people who are as equally as hardworking.
100%. I mean, it's impressive that you went through a period of time like that, especially while being a student at Frost. I want you to talk a little bit more about how you balanced that artistic development that you're now exploring even more publicly, versus what you were studying in school, which I know was in the jazz department, correct?
Totally, totally. So I think being an artist, it comes in phases, right? So at first you kind of have to just study, right?
Mm-hmm.
Music can actually be a really solitary art form, in my opinion, because when you're studying, you're not surrounded by people. It's the time that you put in the practice room, whether you're studying scores or for myself, it would mean practicing new instruments, piano, guitar, developing your voice, right? All these things.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I wasn't even songwriting. I didn't even know how to write a song. It was just studying and studying jazz, and I love jazz. So it was a good way into the music world, because the harmony is a bit more complex.
Mm-hmm.
So learning that language. And then as time went on, I started playing these jazz gigs once I graduated. And little by little, I found myself in different places with different friends from different countries in Latin America. And we would go to their houses and we would just jam. And for some reason, this kind of music just came so naturally to me, particularly like Latin American folk music.
Yeah.
And so I told myself, there's something there. So
Yeah.
now I have to study that music, right? So it was another stage of practicing and studying. And it's not until very recently, maybe a year or two ago, that I'm really finding my own self and writing my own music. And, this is what I want to say. This is what I want to share into the world.
That's amazing. I love how you described the different phases that you went through, because I think every artist's journey through various genres is innately unique. I know from my own experience, I went into college definitely wanting to make more American style pop, maybe pop R&B, and I had released 1 or 2 songs prior to college, but then living in Miami and really absorbing all the influences here helped me connect even more to my Latinidad and inspired me to want to make bilingual music and reggaeton, música urbana, and just like fuse all those influences together. So that leads me right into my next question for you, which is about the Miami Light Project. How did you first get involved with them, and what is it?
So the Miami Light Project is a nonprofit organization that has different programs within that. And Miami Light Project has something called the Here and Now Grant. So what they do is they commission 3 to 4 artists a year. And then they have a presentation with those 4 artists. So our Human Years, which is my other project, I have 2 projects. With our Human Years, we decided to apply last August, and it was actually my second time applying. The first time I applied was about 3 years ago, and I didn't get it. And we decided to apply with our record, and it will be the record will be released in June, and the show itself, we're actually going to have our own show commissioned by the Miami Light Project Here and Now, and that will be premiering on June 7th, 2024.
That's so exciting. Where's the show going to be held?
At the Miami Theater Center, or I'll put the details below, but it's the studio next to Miami Theater Center. So that's in Miami Shores.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to learn more about that and hopefully be able to attend.
Yeah, so the project is called Our Human Years, and it all started with a colleague of mine. His name is Dion Kerr. He's a multi-instrumentalist. And he had reached out to me earlier, I think maybe 2 years ago, to ask me something about WDNA, which I also work as a radio host at the station. And in writing to each other, I think we both said something like, oh, let's jam. Of course, as you know, if you're a musician, we kind of like say that all the time.
Yeah.
But we were so serious about it. We were like, okay, let's get together and let's write songs. Let's not just jam, but let's write music and see what can come of it. And I was really, I guess, happy and surprised because I came into it with no expectations, just kind of like as an experience. And there was a lot of musical synergy when it came to writing music. And so we first started with a tune called Clock Strikes 3. And that one we actually
That's a really
have
cool
it.
name.
Thank you. That one is released already on YouTube, a live version. So if anyone wants to go check it out, you definitely can. And Clock Strikes 3 is kind of about like 3. Have you ever heard about 3 a.m. and the haunting hour with dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, I kept waking up at that time, and I was kind of scared, like, okay, what's going on? And my projects have a lot to do with the dream world, with ancestry, with fantasy. And so part of my practice is quite literally going into my dreams, going into that dream state, seeing what I can extract from those dreams, and then I put that into my music. So
that is so cool. I love that.
Thank you. So that song, Clock Strikes 3, is about me going into that dream world.
Wow. I love the creativity and the concept behind this music. I think that's something that can so often be lost with modern contemporary songwriters, and I think it's really cool that you're infusing that into this Latin American folk sound that you're creating. How would you describe sonically some of the elements of this type of music and the Our Human Years project?
Yeah, so for my individual project, Nicolle Garcia, I would say it's a fusion of world music, Latin American folk songs. It's just pretty much a trio with nylon string guitars and percussion. So the percussion's a really important element. However, with Our Human Years, It's almost very electronic, and the soundscape is very atmospheric.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so it's very different, and it's also with no percussion. So it's a percussion drumless trio, which opens up so many sonic opportunities. So it's myself on vocals, Dion Kerr on bass, and Tim Watson on guitar.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm so
So it's
excited.
different, yeah.
That's really cool. So, my next question for you is, I know that you have sort of had this departure from jazz in your creative, artistic world. Do you see jazz still being a strong foundational element in your musical career?
100%. Totally. I would even say Our Human Years definitely has elements of jazz. It has elements of classical music. It has elements of programmatic music. A lot of it is through composed. And so all three of us come from a jazz background, and
Okay, awesome.
yeah, so we all studied at Frost. Well, I think Dion, I don't know about Dion, but I think he did. And so that's definitely a foundational element.
How do you navigate that world here with live music and finding venues that you want to perform at?
You can see the smile on my face because I'm still navigating that. It's so difficult here. It's so difficult because with the Nicolle Garcia project, it's a more acoustic sound. It's definitely a slower pace. It's a very small trio as well, so it's not like this fast-paced music, and it's really difficult to find venues because what I'm looking for is a space that is dedicated to listening. So I don't feel like my music does very well in spaces where people are maybe just looking to like have a good time and like dance around and party. It's not quite the music for that space, so it's been difficult to find venues that I don't have to change myself for.
Yeah.
So
That's hard. It is hard. Could you give a quick shout out to some of the awesome venues you have been able to play at?
yes, 100%. I will say WDNA has been amazing because they just have listeners, right? So I just did this performance at WDNA. It was kind of like a comeback after like a year and a half of not doing, my own official project. And the last show that I played was at the Center for Subtropical Affairs. Do you remember that place?
Yes, yeah, I do. I
It's
do.
so beautiful. I don't know. I have to do some more research because that was a great venue as well. It was very tropical. It was outdoors, so that kind of really fits the vibe for my music.
Yeah.
So that was a great venue. WDNA, also a great venue where people really want to listen to the music. So shout out to those two.
That's awesome. I remember also just for fun, we attended once the Jazz in the Garden event at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden. And I think that's a cool opportunity also for other like minded artists who kind of delve into the jazz or folk, indie sort of vibe to reach out and, tap into that audience. Because I think while that not isn't necessarily a space solely dedicated to listening, it's a much more forgiving environment than a restaurant or a club or a bar. I've also done those kind of gigs, and it can be incredibly difficult to feel like you're connecting with the audience. And that's such a huge part of feeling fulfilled in a performance, that I totally get where you're coming from there.
So I think in the future, or what the place where I'm at right now is that when I was creating my songs or doing my songwriting, I really tried to stay away from who do I want to be, and I just kind of let the art flow first. Then I
Yeah.
analyze it and see where can this fit. Because before that I was trying to do it the opposite way, like, oh, I have access to XYZ venue, let me cater to the audience with it, which I think is a really good thing because the music is for them and you want them to enjoy. However, in creating your art, it's important to be honest to yourself. And so I did have to step back from gigging for a while and just look internally and give myself some time to just do writing. So that's what I did for a few months. Like I took a break for like a whole month. I went on a trip, no music, which of course I ended up writing music on that trip. And then,
of course.
and then I came back and I felt like the music was just flowing so much better. And I was able to write some more music and really see, okay, this is my sound. I really like my sound.
I love that. I mean, our topic this week has been inspired by you as our guest. So, we're going to be talking about creative motivation and discipline in our next segment, but that directly correlates with some of the things we're going to talk about in the next segment. Where that inspiration comes from, how to avoid burnout, how to keep the ball rolling, and the difference between, something kind of coming to you in a fit of passion where you write all of the lyrics down at one moment versus having to grapple with deadlines or professional obligations. So I'm really excited to get into that topic with you too in just a second. But I wanted to ask you one last question before we move on. What are some of your musical influences? So I know that you have jazz influences. I know you have some folk, Nicaraguan influences. Who are some artists that really developed you as a musician?
Oh man, I should have prepared for this question. This is probably my least favorite question because I
It's a tough one.
never know what to say. I know I'm gonna forget someone super important, but off the top of my head, I would probably say Bjork.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love her style of writing, and it's just very poetic. And I feel like she's very fearless. So that's my favorite thing about her. She's fearless. It's not like a traditional style of writing, which I think I've kind of also adopted. If I had to think of someone else, there's an artist. Her name is Silvia Perez Cruz. I believe she's from Spain. And in her repertoire of compositions, even being from Spain, she's played Mexican folk songs, and she allows herself to, she allows herself to just play any style, which I also really like about her. So Bjork, Silvia Perez Cruz, Cecile McLaurin-Salvant. She's a jazz artist. Gosh, I know I'm totally forgetting people, but
no, it's okay. I love those three as it is. I definitely have some homework to do as far as the second two to get some listening going. But Bjork specifically is really interesting to me because I also love her music. I think she's part of a different generation of musicians who were allowed to be fearless. And I think that, moving into the next segment, that's something we can touch upon even more because it feels with social media and how oversaturated the industry can be, it can sometimes feel like it's a conform or die kind of mentality. Like, how do you find that specific area to fit your puzzle piece into and find the listeners that will deeply connect with you? So I'm so excited to keep talking about this. We'll move into a quick commercial break before our next segment. All right, guys, welcome back. We're here with Nicolle Garcia, an amazing independent artist. She's a Nicaraguan folk, jazz, and indie artist working on all sorts of different projects across Miami Light Project, Our Human Years, and her own project by the same name, Nicolle Garcia. So, Nicolle, I want to talk to you about a topic that is really important to musicians and honestly creative professionals of all sorts: motivation and discipline. So we touched upon this a little bit before, but how do you stay motivated in those moments where the inspiration just isn't flowing?
well, I'd like to be very sincere in this. I hate the word discipline.
Okay, I get
I
it.
hate it because it's hard.
I feel that. I totally
I
feel that.
love, I feel like within all of us, we have elements of like femininity and masculinity, and those scales are, offset depending on who you are, how you identify. And I've always correlated femininity with a lot of flow. And so when it comes to music and being an artist, that flow to me is correlated with living in the moment, living in the present. And so I've always had like a pushback with making schedules, having a calendar. It's been hard for me, but
Yeah.
I must say there's no way around it. Like you want to be successful, there's no way around it. You have to have discipline. Multiple hours in your day, dedicated to your craft, whether it's a time to study, whether it's a time to create, whether it's a time to perform. Like I was saying before, all of those elements, you just have to be disciplined. And for me, I'm actually trying something new recently, where I'm really rigid with my schedule. And so if I had to say like the amount of hours that I spend on my work per day would be like a regular work, it would honestly be like 7 to 8 hours. However, my hours are totally backwards. So I'll work from like 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. on my work. And I'm just really working on maybe switching that to see if perhaps it's a little bit more effective, but the hours need to be there. Like it doesn't matter what time you do it, they need to be there. And I was recently reading a snippet of a book called Atomic Habits. And it kind of changed my perspective because this whole time I thought that schedules and discipline removed all your creativity. And I've just always been so rebellious and anti, like, oh, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to do this. I want to be a free bird. And so I'm reading in this book and it says, well, if you want to create more time for you to be creative and more time for you to just flow, making a schedule is really helpful and sticking to it, because then you don't have to waste time thinking about what you need to do.
Yeah.
And that just made everything click for me.
That is such good advice. And as a woman with ADHD, this is literally the thing I struggle with in top position 100% of the time. I quite literally have a dry erase board next to me always with a to-do list. I have a monthly calendar. I have a weekly calendar. And the thing that I've struggled with the most is sticking to that rigidity. But I also think that that's an element of discipline, being able to hunker down and force yourself into those time slots. And I think one thing that you said, that creating this rigid schedule allows you more creative freedom, also goes to be true with songwriting a lot of times too. I know when I was at Craig Carruthers was my songwriting teacher, and he often said that the more rules you impose on yourself going into a song and creating a prompt for yourself, even if it's hypothetical, the less decision paralysis you might face, because there are fewer options, right? Instead of having the entire rainbow to choose from, you have blue, red, yellow, green. And what can you make with those colors? A lot of combinations. So I love the idea of limiting your scope a little bit and taking things in bite-sized portions. And that's something I'm actively working on as well. So it's comforting in a way to hear that as creatives, we struggle with similar things, but it's also important to note that you have to push through it.
You have
regardless.
to. There's actually no way around it. There's no way around it. And I also
100%.
I studied with Craig as well. So I took lyric writing with him. I loved that class. And what you're saying makes me think of recently, I took a trip to Mexico, and being Nicaraguan American, my family listened to a lot of rancheras and música de banda. And I always told myself, well, I can't sing that because it doesn't really fit into what I'm doing. And I put that rule on myself. But in my last show, I said, this is music that I love, and perhaps it can fit into what I'm doing. So something that I did prior to the show is that I did a little bit of more studying on the kind of music that I like. So for example, ranchera, right? How does that harmony move? what are the typical isms vocally or with the harmony or with the rhythm, and how can I use those elements in my music? So it's exactly what you're saying about when you're writing a song, you put these parameters. And then I was so happy because, okay, I've written a ranchera and now it's my song and it can go with me, you know? So.
And you own it and you have made it into something that feels authentic to you.
Totally.
I think that's so important, and that goes into, you know, finding your sound as an artist. It can be incredibly difficult to take all this abundance of influences that you've grown up with, that you see even in your musical or educational life, and then finding a way to make it feel like you. I definitely went through a lot of different genre paths as well, going from high school through college to now. How do you feel that balance, I guess, because you said that the Our Human Years project and the sound there is so vastly different from your sound as Nicolle Garcia. So how do you balance those two creative outlets?
You know, I'm actually trying to figure that one out because yeah, I would actually love your perspective on that, because we were actually, to be fully transparent, we were actually wondering ourselves if it would make more sense to just call the record Our Human Years and to tag each of our individual selves as artists instead of making a band. Because starting a band from scratch, you know, you might not have as many listeners. Then people can't find that Nicolle Garcia has done 2 projects, you know, right on Apple Music. So it has its setbacks in that sense. But I also ask myself, you know, will this confuse listeners perhaps? You know, will then I have to start from scratch again when I release the next thing that's a bit more acoustic? So those are
Yeah.
questions that I have, and I mean, I would love your perspective on that.
I definitely have some opinions on this because I have gone through a tumultuous journey of like in and out of different genres and styles and things, because I wanted to land on something that felt authentic to me, but also didn't feel like it was getting swept up in the inundation of content and oversaturation that exists right now in the industry, especially in pop music. Initially, when I went to started out kind of doing some bilingual music, but then I second guessed myself. So I went through this whole process of then going back into American pop music, doing English like pop R&B sound, doing even some pop dance music in English, and then ultimately cycling back to bilingual music. I totally get what you're saying also with the band, having a difficult time accruing new listeners, and then all of a sudden you have the pressure of having this new entity that you have to create content for and social media pages and release music on a consistent basis. So if this is a one-off kind of project with these individuals, 100% I would suggest that you release it as the title of the project under your own artist names as like a 3-way collaboration on Spotify. That's what would make the most sense to me. Although it might be a slight departure from what your sound is going to be moving forward, because it's a project with other people, I feel like that's a little bit more forgivable to the listener than just, you know, random singles, and it would make the visibility of the record more possible. It would make it open to more potential. However, if you want to pursue that sound separately from your project, you have to create a game plan of, okay, this is our first single, this is when it's being released, what is the follow-up? And you have to have a follow-up, not just for Nicolle Garcia's, but also for that project. So it depends on how seriously you want to continue pursuing one sound versus the other, or simultaneously.
I'll consult with the bands. I'll tell them to watch this episode of Jasmine Ortiz Show. Like I was telling you before, the Nicolle Garcia project is, I mean, with both projects, it's about fantasy, it's about dreams, it's about ancestry, it's about love, it's about, you know, all these things. And in that sense, I do feel like totally, I mean, I think the listeners will understand and see me in both of those projects. They just have different sounds. I love collaboration. I really do. Whether it's with another visual artist, whether it's with other musicians, I think that it's a beautiful thing. And I think also having your own solo project is a beautiful thing as well.
Absolutely. I've done a lot of collaborations with producers and songwriters, even within my own solo project. So I think it absolutely enhances the endless opportunities and creative ideas that you can come up with in a group. One more thing I actually wanted to talk about with you is practicing self confidence and how that's a form of discipline as well. Something that you and I briefly spoke about was how you can employ that belief in yourself, the belief in your project in a tangible sense. So you mentioned, you've grown more accustomed to mentioning your music, pitching it to people that you meet and having that discussion. What are other ways that you feel you've started doing this more in your life?
Hmm. I think just having a light or project or something that shines so bright that people cannot ignore it, even if they tried. Some ways that one could practice self-confidence is just being aware, like creating an awareness, like when you walk into a room, um, like, are you standing straight? I've taken dance classes, that's helped a lot. Um, Also, I think when you practice a lot, you have confidence. Meaning,
Yeah.
if I know I'm doing my warm-ups every single day, I'm going to have more confidence when I sing my show because I know I put in the hours.
Yeah.
Versus if I know I'm a little unprepared, that's definitely going to create a lack of confidence. I'll say this, like, one more thing. At the end of the day, I feel like my music is very beautiful and I feel like I'm a very beautiful person. Like, my heart is a beautiful heart and I want to share that. So just like, even
Yeah.
for all of us to just like admire the beauty in ourselves that we want to share with others, I hope I could emulate that for others when they see me sing, like, oh wow, she's so confident, she knows her music is beautiful and she knows she's beautiful. Like, I want to be like that too. That's kind of what I'm hoping to do
Yeah.
with music.
Absolutely. And you want to share in that confidence with your audience and allow them to also turn around and say, what am I confident and what am I good at? And use that in their own life. I think that's such an important part of engaging in a musical performance, what you're taking away from it as well.
Yeah, and not being scared of your own power or of your own beauty.
Why does it almost feel like a negative thing to admit that you think you're
I don't
beautiful?
know.
And I feel the same way because I think I'm beautiful. I think my music is
You
beautiful. I think
are.
we're both great. I love you. I think we're both really talented creatives, but saying that with your full chest can sometimes feel controversial. And I think the biggest takeaway from this conversation that I hope listeners get is that you should be confident with your full chest. You
Mm-hmm.
should say, I'm beautiful, I'm talented, I'm going to make my dreams come true because I am putting in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
100%.
worth it to put in the work because a lot of times the reason dreams fail, the reason art doesn't get made is not because the talent wasn't there. It's
Mm-hmm.
because the belief slips away
Yeah.
and the person doesn't feel like their art or their vision is worth it.
Yeah. We don't have time anymore to not be confident. Those days are in the teenage years. All that.
Yes.
You know,
You're so right about that. And I think it's a good reminder for anyone listening in any discipline that you don't have time to waste. You get one life and you should be confident in the things that you enjoy doing.
yes, exactly.
One last question that I actually wanted to ask you also ties into discipline and motivation. I know that you sing and write in both English and Spanish. Do you feel like your singing or your writing flows more in one language than the other, or do you feel like it's the same across the board?
I must say, when I don't know what it is, maybe it's like some ancestral powers going through me. I feel like when I sing in Spanish, it's just very, very deep. It's very connected. It feels like it flows a lot easier. I do different things with my voice without even realizing. And depending on the audience, I've gotten feedback from audiences who don't even speak Spanish that say, like, when you sing in Spanish, wow, you know. But
Yeah.
when it comes to writing, it's definitely easier in English because, I mean, at the end of the day, I grew up here and I would probably consider that my first language. So in that sense, English might be easier as well. But I guess from also a vocal standpoint, it is a little easier to sing in Spanish. The vowels are just more open.
The flowing.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that.
I totally agree with you. For me, I think writing in English is definitely a little bit easier just because, like you said, we grew up here. I grew up listening to a lot of Spanish being spoken at home. My first word was agua, fun fact.
Yes, hydration.
Yes. But I wasn't, a 3-year-old poet in Spanish. But I did start songwriting in English when I was 9. So I think it just took a lot more self-work to develop the confidence to feel able to write in Spanish musically and creatively, because it's not just writing a sentence and literally knowing how to, speak or engage in a language. It's being creative and poetic and finding double entendres and using those analogies to tell stories. And that's such a big responsibility as a songwriter and a creative that I sometimes can second guess myself, but I think it's, that discipline that plays in of constantly practicing my Spanish, practicing my writing in Spanish. And like you said, I also do feel really confident singing in Spanish. So I think it can be different pieces of the puzzle that come together to make it work all as one unit. Thank you so much for your time today, Nicolle. I really appreciated all of your insight, all of the inspirational things that you said, your history, your story, and I'm super excited about your upcoming project. Can you share with everyone how we can find you on social media and how we can look for the project when it comes out?
Yes, please do. It's Nicolle, Nicollegars. That's its Instagram handle. And fun fact, my mom supposedly named me with 2 L's because she said that she knew I was going to be an artist. She wanted my name to be a little different.
That's awesome.
So,
I love that.
I don't know.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. No, really, yeah. So that's my Instagram, Nicolle, Nicollegars. And then Our Human Years, pretty much just how it's spelled, Our Human Years is the Instagram for the other project. And once you log on to those Instagrams, you can click on the link tree and you can see the music that we've released so far on YouTube.
Awesome. And one more reminder about that show coming up. How can we find that?
Yes, so that's going to be on June 7th, 2024 of this year. And we'll be posting updates on Instagram as well. So we'll have all the information in the link tree, the time, the tickets, all of the info.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Nicolle.
Thank you, Jasmine.
All right, you guys heard it here first. We're going to all go see, collectively, we're going to go see Nicolle Garcia on June 7th. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to go into a commercial break before our next segment. Hey guys, welcome back. We're moving into our very last segment, which is our community corner. This is where you guys ask us questions or share stories that we can respond to for you. Okay, so did you get any, Jordy?
Yes. I got one from somebody asking, and I don't even know if we'll have good answers for this, but I feel like it's a good one. Somebody asked, why did we decide to live where we are post-college, and what decisions went into that?
I mean, that's definitely a good question. I think in a general sense, for most people, it has to do with a job opportunity or where they wanted to move with a partner or moving back home with parents. I think for me specifically, it was, I originally had a plan to go back to LA because I had spent part of my junior year living there. But kind of at the last second, I ended up getting some more opportunities for me in Miami, and it felt like a less drastic, less terrifying kind of transition to just stay put where I was and work on growing roots right here. And to be fair, I didn't have the situation where I went to school in like a really small college town. I'm in a major city. So the the opportunities are already very plentiful in a place like Miami. And especially for what I'm doing with bilingual music, it just made all the sense in the world. And I think emotionally, I wasn't ready to let go.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a lot of it, and from what I heard from like our friends trying to figure out where to go after college and what makes sense, a lot of it is financial and where
Absolutely.
your like heart is taking you a lot of the time. For me, like I had the idea that I wanted to move to Atlanta after college, just because I thought that my music would do well there, and I wanted to find more of a black community or a different kind of black community than what I have in New York. But I think ultimately New York made sense financially. I got to be closer to my family, and I think it was a good decision because there ended up being a lot of things in a row that I'm like, I'm glad I'm home for this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and all of my music connections ended up leading me back to New York one way or another, which was really interesting. Like I think
That's
I was
serendipitous.
trying so yeah, it felt very serendipitous. Like I was trying so hard to go anywhere else because I was like I'm from here, uh like I want to branch out, but like every opportunity I got or had or like people I talked to just kind of ended up leading me back here. And I feel like it's the best thing I could have had. Like I managed to build so much community and connection, and to make so much music more than I ever have in like this year than I have in my whole life, which is crazy because I've been here
Wow.
my whole life, but like the past year or two have been the most fruitful in New York. So yeah, wherever
That's
your heart leads you.
amazing. My heart has always had a piece of it in New York. I have always felt like a pull to the city. I just also
It's
felt like I
waiting for
wasn't.
you.
I know. I know we're going to experience part of our 20s together in New York City. I'm manifesting it now. I'm saying it on air. It's going to happen.
Yep.
But I also felt like I wasn't quite ready for a change that big yet. I grew up pretty close to New York, like an hour and a half away. So I went to the city a lot growing up. It's not that I don't feel comfortable there. It's not that it doesn't already kind of feel like a second home. I just wanted to know I was in a place where I wasn't so confused about life when I moved to New York,
Mm.
if that makes sense. Because I didn't already have like a place to stay there or whatever. So I wanted to be 100% sure I could take care of myself and I could be fully independent and I could have things better figured out by the time I moved to New York because I want to live a life there that I've dreamt of. And I feel like I'm still in like a growing phase and I'm not there yet. But I do see it happening. I see it happening at some point.
I see it too.
All
I'm
right, so I
biased.
have yes, please. No, I want to live in the same city with you again. Another question that I got is kind of related to our city lifestyles. What are some non-nightlife or drinking related activities that you can do with friends?
Mm.
Big one.
Yeah, so I have a good one for this because I think as things are warming up, first of all, I think weather is a huge part of it. And being able to find more spaces outside where you can just like go touch some grass with your friends, I think is a really important thing actually. So, like for example, for my birthday is this upcoming week. Yay. And
Happy
I
birthday, Jordy.
thank you. And I really wanted to not have a traditional party because I was like, I feel like everyone's just kind of in their own spaces and like, we go out drinking fairly often. And I wanted to do something that was like, everyone's stressed out right now. Let's just go outside and touch some grass. So we're just going to have like a big, like, park picnic thing, like potluck. Everyone's gonna bring speakers and blankets and things like that and just make a day of it.
Oh,
And I told everyone to bring a friend and have your friend bring a friend, and we can all just like hang out and meet new people and like lay in the grass and take some naps and eat some snacks. um and I feel like if you're the kind of person who like wants to be able to see your friends in a different setting, sometimes you have to be the one to take that step. But being able to just kind of use what's around you, like there's a lot of different apps and things like that as well, but I think if you can see what's in your neighborhood, what's near your friends, and just kind of take advantage of open spaces or free spaces and things like that, and just enjoy each other's company. I think there's always stuff available to you.
100%. Yeah, it's funny that you talked about like summer coming and everything, because I feel like the days of being outside in Miami are coming to an end.
Mm.
Because it's just getting so insanely hot. So unless you're like going in the pool for a day or going to the beach, it's a little sad for me because I'm like, man, I miss winter. It was so nice to be outside in the winter. Which is funny because we have it totally backwards.
Not agree.
And it's like the summer is the time where I miss the Northeast the most, actually. And I wish that I was back for parts of the summer. I think I will come back at some point this summer and spend some time in New York with you.
Yay.
But yeah, it's interesting. I think in Miami especially, it's an important question to ask yourself because it's difficult at first to see people who would even kind of want to do something that isn't nightlife with you, especially if you're not already close. But I did find a group of people through the Clicks app, which I've discussed before. It's kind of like a dating app for friends, basically. And there's a lot of people who like to do water sports here, kayaking, paddleboarding, or swimming, or going to the beach, or camping. And those are things that I'm super into because I just love getting outside, especially being around the water because it's so hot. So finding groups like that are really important. Hobbies that you have in common with people. I've been trying to find like a female pool players league or something, but I haven't been able to find one. I want that so bad because, no offense to older men or anything. I just don't want to be the only young woman. Okay, I just don't want to be the only young woman in like a group full of like 20 older men playing pool. It just feels so uncomfortable. So any girlies in Miami that want to play pool, like hit me up on Instagram because I want to play pool with you. Another thing you could do is take classes and things if like you can save up money for that, like culinary classes or candle making, soap making, just stay home and bake with your friends. Do arts and crafts, make vision boards. Like there's so many options. I'm saying things to stay indoors because I know it's hot, girls. Like I know.
Yeah. I don't want to go outside anymore.
I know. I have one more question. This one says, what are some ways to establish a healthier work-life balance, especially if you work from home?
I've thought about this one a lot because especially I feel like I might be the only one of my friends who does not work from home in a certain capacity, and seeing them being a little bit like burnt out and trying to schedule things and hanging out with each other. One thing that my friends have been trying out is finding cafes or like hotel restaurants and hotel cafes that are open to the public that let you sit with your computer and like use their Wi-Fi and just work in general. Because I feel like it helps you like get out of your house a little bit more, and then like scheduling things near each other to hang out. Like once they're clocked out at 5, they can go do something after, or like going to the same cafe and just working 9 to 5 together but silently, and then going to do something after.
I think that's the thing I need to get better at. My roommate and I, Julia, like she works from home a lot and we never do it together. We've done it together a couple of times, but I have some other friends here that also work from home. And I'm like, okay, girls, like we need to get together. We need to make it a thing because I do think that helps with your separation of work and life a lot better as well. I think the scheduling thing for us is really important because you and I both teach certain days of the week. So we have that element, but I teach from home. So it's even more so like I'm just here.
Right.
But my biggest problem is that I sometimes don't stick to my own schedule, and then I find myself working until like 10 or 11 p.m. every night. And then I'm like, when do I get to just sit and play Zelda? When do I get to just scrapbook? When do I get to do my hobbies? And I'm really trying to make it a point to get better at compartmentalizing those things. And okay, maybe not 5 o'clock because let's be real, I'm starting at 10, not 9. Maybe not 5 o'clock, maybe like 6:30. I'm like done. I'm eating dinner and I'm relaxing for the night. That's my new goal.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I think for me also what's helped is waking up earlier, which is maybe
True.
rough depending on the person. But for me, like because my work schedule is so weird, it's been interesting trying to find time to do my hobbies and to talk to my friends and stuff like that. So I wake up at 7 every morning,
Oh my gosh.
just to have some me time. Like just to
Yeah.
like read my book for an hour and like stretch and eat breakfast and not feel rushed and things like that because I don't work till the afternoon most days. So I think if it makes sense, depending on the person, like you, sleep is important always, but at least like scheduling your sleep first and then seeing what you actually need and then being able to shift it in either direction. So like if you know you need like 7 hours, like are you going to bed at like midnight and then waking up at 7, or are you going to bed at like 9 and then waking up earlier, depending on the person. But I think
Yeah.
it helps a lot.
I've been really trying to be in bed by 12 and asleep or trying to go to sleep by 1.
Same.
That's like a huge change for me because in college I'd be like 3, 4 a.m., no big deal. Like every single night. I don't
That's
know
that Miami.
I don't know what happened to me in the past 2 years. Like I literally used to be able to just run on fumes, but I'm trying to actually take care of myself, and I have been at least setting my alarm for like 8 to 8:30 most days, but today I did allow myself to sleep in because the past 2 nights I literally did not sleep at all. I think I tossed and turned the entire night. So I was just like down horrific. Today, though, I'm feeling much more energized, completely rested, and, tomorrow's a new day, guys. Don't be hard on yourself if you fumble the schedule one day. Just try again next. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week. Once again, this is the Jasmine Ortiz Show with my wonderful co-host, Jordy Polycarp. We'll see you again next week.